On the phone, we have one of the greatest Chicago White Sox players of all times. I remember this gentleman playing right field for the White Sox in the early '80s when he was in his 20s. He was absolutely incredible. Harold Baines. How you doing today, Mr. Baines?
I'm great, and you?
Great. I remember when you came up with the White Sox. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. You were, what, 20 years old, and it just took off. 21 years old?
Well, you must be old as I am, if you can remember that.
How did you end up getting drafted number one by the White Sox?
How? I mean,
Yes.
as the story goes, Bill Veeck saw me as a little leaguer. He lived in the area, and he just kept a tab on me. And when I was a senior in high school, that's when a lot of scouts came around. And unfortunately, the White Sox were bad, and he decided to draft me number one that year, 1977.
Did you have any idea who Bill Veeck was as a 12-year-old?
Not at all. Not at all.
What was he like when you first met him?
Very nice guy. I mean, everybody said he did a lot of clowning around, but just trying to make a buck. But he just treated me with respect.
When you first came up to the White Sox, what was it like with that team? Because Tony La Russa was a young manager, and you didn't have that many stars on that team.
No, I think the '80 was an older team. I was probably one of the younger ones. In '81, we had a big strike, so we lost half the year there. But I think after the '81 season, they went out and got Carlton Fisk and Greg Luzinski, and that's when it kind of turned our team around.
What was it like when the ownership changed from Bill Veeck to Eddie Einhorn and Jerry Reinsdorf?
Well, it was a big difference because they started spending a little bit of money, so they were able to get better players. And in 1983, we were fortunate enough to win the pennant.
Who was the leader of the White Sox teams in the early '80s when you had Carlton Fisk and Greg Luzinski come over?
I would say both of them were the leaders. I mean, we had a young pitching staff. We had Richard Dotson, Brett Burns, Lamar Hort. Jerry Cumins was a big influence on those younger pitchers. So, I mean, we were very fortunate to have players around us that had been in the game a while and done good things in the game.
Did any of the older players help you out?
No, the biggest guy that helped me wasn't a player. It was when Tony went out and got Charlie Lyle as our hitting coach, who taught me not my swing, but how to study pitchers and that part of the game.
Well, how did Charlie Lyle differ from other hitting coaches you had to work with through the years?
I mean, everybody has something you can learn from, but Charlie knew how to dissect the pitchers, how they were going to try to pitch you that particular day, and his way of teaching the swing itself worked for me. Not to say it would work for everybody, but it worked for me.
Because one of his disciples was Walt Herniak, another guy you work with.
Well, you got to realize that George Brett worked with him too. Where is he? Hall of Fame.
Again, so George, he worked with a lot of great players.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he just kept it simple. He just baseball can't make baseball harder than what it is. It's already a hard game.
That 1983 season, I remember, was just magical. It seemed like you guys could do no wrong after the first month of the season. Did you realize what was going on while it was happening?
Well, you're going back 30 years. You're trying to get me to remember what happened 30 years. It's kind of hard. I mean, we did have a little struggle in the first half, but once the second half turned around, as I remember, we didn't really matter what the score was. We always felt we could come back and win the game. And Lamar Hort had a great year. Brett Burns had a great year, and Richard Dotson had a great year. So your top three pitchers pitched very well for us.
It seemed like that year you could do no wrong, too. We had, 20-some game-winning RBIs. It seemed like whenever they needed a clutch hit, you came through with it.
Well, you got to realize a clutch hit could be the first inning if you really look at it. But I enjoy hitting later in the ball game. So if you can get a base hit with a man on second base and 2 outs, then you got a chance of having a longevity in your career.
I know one game you'll probably never forget was that game against the Milwaukee Brewers, that 25-inning game.
Yeah, only because it took 2 days. I can't tell you how many hits I got. I just know I had hit the home run in the 25th inning. But after that, I had to play 9 more innings. So, so that's like, what, 34
almost 3
innings
games.
over 3 games? Yeah, in 2 days.
I don't think you'll ever see anything like that again because they won't have enough pitchers. Because back then the pitchers...
that wasn't the point. It's just that we had a curfew. Now you don't have a curfew. The game couldn't start after, I think, 1 o'clock. So that's why it went into 2 days. If there wasn't a curfew, then we would probably just kept on playing until somebody scored.
After the 83 season, did you think, you know what, I think we're going to end up winning a World Series one of these years coming up because we have such a young, dominating pitching staff?
Yeah, you always think you can, but it's not, I realize that it's not that easy. So every team is trying to do the same thing you are. And just, 84, we didn't really do that well. So that was a reality check right there for me.
Did you realize that Tony La Russa was become the Hall of Fame manager he did become?
No, you don't think that longevity, but yeah, I know he was a very good manager in the minor leagues. He did his homework, and he was always, his old saying was he liked to get the edge, and he always had the edge. Want to stay one step above your opponent.
Who was the toughest pitcher you went up against?
I would say overall probably Randy Johnson, but as a left-handed hitter, they usually stacked the right-hand batters against him, so I didn't really play that much. But when I did, he was a pretty tough pitcher to face.
One thing you're underrated for is your defense. I mean, you didn't have the greatest speed, but you got to the balls and you were consistent out there in the outfield. What do you think? Do you think people forget about how well you played out there?
Well, if the writers didn't see me play out there, then they can't really go off any of my defensive skills. All I can go off the last 12 years as a DH. So, if you really did your homework, I played 1,000 games in the outfield and 1,000 games as DH. So, that's kind of rare.
A lot of players have a tough time adjusting to being a DH because, again, their mind's not in the game. Was it easy for you adjusting to be a DH?
It was easy to adjust, but it's not easy to hit just because you got to set. If you don't do well, you got to set until 8 more batters hit before you can hit again. But I only knew that I could help the team by hitting, so that in that sense, it was a little bit easier.
When you got traded to the Rangers, how did you feel?
Heartbroken, but that's when I really knew it was a business. After being with a team for almost 10 years, and then you get traded, but after that, I just looked at it a different way. Of people are going to get traded, but the lawyer part of it.
What was extremely rare was them retiring your number while you were still playing, right there in 1989.
I wasn't even thinking about that. I mean, it was a great gesture, but I was probably still pissed off that they traded me. So.
But the good thing was, though, when you went to the A's, you got to play in the World Series.
Yeah. I mean, I only been 1 year in Texas, so 1 calendar year, and Tony was in Oakland, and he fortunately knew what I could do, and they needed my services. I was happy to go. Texas was in a losing season that year.
How did you know when it was time to retire?
I still have it. It's just the phone stopped ringing.
So if Jerry Reinsdorf asked you or Robin Ventura to suit up, you'd be willing to do it in a second, I'm sure.
My body wouldn't allow me to, not at 55. But your brain thinks you can play, but your body is telling you something else.
When you retired, did you think you had stats that were good enough to get you in the Hall of Fame?
I didn't play the game for that, but I have numbers just as good as some people. But I think this issue is the DH. I think
because the barometer used to be 400 home runs, you're automatic, 3,000 hits, you're automatic, and you were very close on both of those. But now no one knows what the barometer is anymore to get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, the writers can pick whoever they want, And you got over, 500-600 writers, so it's kind of hard to get that 75% for players these days.
When you got the World Series ring in 2005 with the White Sox, what was that like?
It was very nice. I mean, I'm just in the right spot at the right time. The players got the ring for me. I didn't physically play. But, it was with an organization I came up with, and it was fortunate enough to get one as a coach, which I very much appreciate the players getting from me.
Is it more special to get one as a coach or a player, you think?
I would probably say player, just because you physically was able to do something to help that team win. I mean, coaching, yeah, you were helping, but not as much as a player.
How did you end up picking the number 3?
I didn't. They just gave me that number. I think my first number was 53. And once I made the big league team with the White Sox, they switched it to number 3. I don't think I was in any position to tell them what number I wanted.
So it wasn't you were a fan of Babe Ruth or anything like that?
Who's that?
It's not like you were a fan of Babe Ruth growing up where you said, I want to be number 3.
Like I said, who was that?
Oh.
No, I wasn't actually a baseball fan. I just played it. You know, I grew up in an area where you were outdoors all day just playing baseball or some type of sport.
Was there any temptation to play football or basketball growing up? Go professional that route?
Basketball was my first love, but you know, I kind of excelled in baseball. So the scouts started coming around at a pretty young age. So you know, I just dedicated my hard work to that.
Did you have a favorite ballpark to play in?
I would say Camden Yards, probably.
What made Camden so special?
For my type of swing, it was a line drive park for me, and I was a line drive hitter. I'm from Maryland, so you know, I was able to play in a homegrown park that I didn't play in the old park as a visitor. I played in the old park, but in the new park, I was able to play as the home team, which was very special for my family, for them to see me play more.
When the Sox announced they were going to have a statue in your honor, how did that make you feel?
Very, very humble. Very humble. You don't, like I say, you don't play. I played the game for rings, but not for the statues and stuff like that. But you know, that just tells me how much the White Sox appreciated the way I played the game.
What I find truly special with the White Sox is that Jerry Reinsdorf takes care of his former players. I mean, you look back a couple years ago until he passed away, you had Moose Skowron at every game. You have Minnie Minoso. It seems like once you're a White Sox player, you're a White Sox player for life. He doesn't forget about you.
Well, I think if you represent your organization the right way, I think all 30 teams out there would probably do the same thing. If you represent your organization the way you should represent it.
Did you ever think to yourself, I'd like to be a major league manager someday?
No, that's never been in my thinking. You know, I fortunate enough to play for 22 years, and I'm doing a little bit of coaching now, and I definitely want to be around my kids. So I miss most of their life by playing for 22 years.
What was your favorite moment in baseball?
My first game ever. My father was there to see me play, which is, I think if any young kid father can see him play his first professional Major League Baseball game, he'll never forget that. No, that was my most favorite moment.
Is there a player you grew up watching, or you never really watched baseball that much?
No, I didn't watch it. My idol was my father. No baseball, football, basketball player.
I think a lot of people forget how important parents are for kids to become successful in sports, because if your parents support you and they have to drive you around and stuff like that, they teach you what's important.
It's more than a parent, it's the community that has to help you. If you got working parents, somebody got to step up and take their place. And I was fortunate to have a community, make sure I was where I need to be at the right time.